Hello students, today we will be starting a new chapter titled Surface Finish and its measurement from the subject Engineering Metrology. So let's begin with the lecture. Now, what is surface finish? Surface finish indicates that how much the surface is smooth or rough. If a surface has very high finish, we say that the surface is very smooth. Whereas if the finishing of the surface is less, then we can say that the surface has less less surface finished or it has some kind of roughness. Now, what is the need to study the surface finish? In engineering world, in machines, there are many parts which are having relative motion with respect to each other. That is, one part will be sliding over the another part. Now, surface finish is a parameter that determines what will be the friction occurring between the two parts when there is a relative motion between them. If the surfaces of the two parts which are having relative motion with respect to each other are smooth, then the friction between the two surfaces will be less. Due to less friction, less amount of material will be removed. That is, there will be less wear and tear of the machine parts. Also, the amount of heat generated due to the friction will also be less. At the same time, the power consumption because of friction will be also less. So, if the surface is smooth, it leads to lower friction, it leads to lower wear and tear of the material as well as less power consumption. Or we can say that the functioning of the machine is proper. However, if the surface finish of the two sliding parts is higher, then it will result into higher friction between the two surfaces, which will ultimately lead to more wear and tear of the materials. That is, the materials will get eroded earlier as well as there will be more power consumption. Now, second example you can consider that you have a piston moving or sliding inside the cylinder. Now, in a piston cylinder assembly, it is desired that the friction between the piston and the inner surface of the cylinder should be very less. Otherwise, it will lead to the wear and tear of the piston material as well as it will lead to more power consumption. Or, in fact, in short, we can say that the functional aspect of the parts will not be achieved. Hence, to determine what is the surface finish between the two mating parts or what is the friction resulting into the surface finish, we have to study some parameters related to the surface finish. In this chapter, we will be learning some parameters related to surface finish such as surface roughness or surface texture, then causes of this surface roughness, what is primary texture, what is secondary texture, what is roughness width, what is roughness height, what are the various quantitative methods to determine the roughness parameters, what are the various instruments used to determine surface roughness, what is lay, what is flaw, etc. So let's begin. Surface roughness. When a raw material is machined by any machining process, its external surface cannot be finished as perfectly smooth due to deviation from the assumed ideal working condition. So according to this statement, any surface cannot be perfectly smooth, or we can say that the surface will have some kind of roughness because it is never possible to achieve ideal working conditions. For example, if we are performing some operation on a lathe, then the ideal condition will be that the lathe machine is not vibrating at all. But in actual, it is not possible. There will be some kind of vibration always present in any kind of machines. So, due to the vibration of the machine, the cutting tool which is cutting the workpiece will also keep on vibrating, and due to this, some kind of roughness is produced on the surface of the workpiece that is being machined. Hence, we can say on any finished surface, imperfections or irregularities are bound to be there. These irregularities are in the form of successive hills and valleys. So the irregularities that we are talking about, their nature is in the form of hills and valleys, which vary in both height and spacing. That is, the hills as well as the valleys are of not particular height or particular spacing. They have different height as well as the spacing between the hills and valleys are different. These irregularities are nothing but termed as surface roughness. So basically, roughness is nothing but the projections on the surface of a machine part which are in the form of hills and valleys. Now let us understand this with the help of a diagram. Now this is my workpiece. Now the assumed ideal condition was that after machining, the surface of this workpiece, that is the top surface, should be exactly flat. That is the ideal condition, is that the top surface should have been flat. But after machining process, when the surface is observed under microscope, we can see that the surface is not exactly flat, or it has some kind of roughness. This is because of various eh, problems, such as machine vibrations, the various types of coolant used, what is the material used, etc. So, in short, the workpiece does not have a flat surface. Now, if we take a particular section of this workpiece, of this surface, then we can observe under microscope that the surface is in the form of a wave, that is, it has hills and valleys. Now, this surface or these hills and valleys are shown in this diagram. You can see that the surface will be in this form, that is, it will be in the form of a wave with crest and trough. So, the top port, top portion of the wave is called as the crest, and the bottom point or the bottommost point of the wave will be called as the trough. So this surface is in the form of nothing but the crest and trough, or we can say in the form of a valley. And these positions are nothing but called as surface roughness. So these are nothing but irregularities. These are all irregularities in the form of hills and valleys, and they are called as surface roughness. Now, there are other parameters related to surface roughness, that is roughness height and roughness width. Now, what is roughness height and roughness width? Now, the distance between the one crest and the successive next crest will be called as the roughness width. You can see that in this diagram, a dimension called as the wavelength has been given. So, wavelength or the roughness width is one and the same. It is nothing but the distance between one crest and the next successive crest. Also, you can say that the roughness width is the distance between first trough and the next successive trough. The next is roughness height. Roughness height is nothing but the vertical distance between the crest and the trough. So, when we measure the distance from the crest to the trough in vertical direction, the dimension that we get is nothing but the roughness height. Also, you can see in this figure that here some amount of material has been removed. This material removed is nothing is what is called as a flaws. Crater flaw, that is some amount of material has been removed, and the next flaw is nothing but a crack flaw, that is some part of this workpiece has been cracked. So wherever there is a crack or a crater, then these irregularities are nothing but termed as flaws. Also, you can see here a lay direction. Now, lay direction is nothing but it indicates the direction in which the workpiece has been machined by the cutting tool. You can see in this figure that the cutting tool has been moved in a direction perpendicular to this surface, that is perpendicular to the length of the workpiece. So this is nothing but the lay direction, which indicates simply the tool marks or the direction in which tool has cut the workpiece. Now next we will study factors causing surface roughness. Now some of the factors causing surface roughness are listed here. The first is machine vibrations. Now surface gets rough because of machine vibration. This is because when the machine keeps on vibrating, the tool which is mounted on the machine also keeps on vibrating. Due to vibration of the tool may get loose from the tool post, or it is it may get deflected from its actual position. And due to this vibration of the tool or deflection of the tool, the surface of the object which is being machined becomes rough. Second, quality of the material used. Now, roughness depends upon what quality of the material we are using. For example, if we perform some machining operation on a mild steel specimen, then the surface finish obtained is very high. Whereas if we perform the same machining operation on the cast iron, then the surface finish obtained will be less. So surface finish is also some inherent property of the quality of the material being used. If we have good quality material, then the surface finish obtained will be high. Whereas if the quality of the material is bad or it is low quality material, then even by using the same machining process, we cannot obtain the same surface finish. Or we can say that the surface finish will be less of low quality material. Third is the type of machining process. Surface roughness also depends upon what type of machining process we are using on the workpiece. For example, if we perform a turning operation or a facing operation on a lathe machine, manual lathe machine, then the surface roughness will be high, or we can say that the surface of the object will be less smooth. Similarly, if we perform the same turning and facing operation on CNC lathe machine, then the finishing obtained of the surface will be very high. So the surface roughness also depends upon what type of machining process we are using to perform the work on the workpiece. The next is cutting parameters, that is speed, depth of cut, etc. Now these cutting parameters, that is what is the feed of the cutting tool, what is the depth of the cut, what is the speed of the machine, etc. determines the surface finish. As we vary the feed, vary the speed as well as depth of cut, the surface roughness also goes on changing. So the feed, speed and depth of cut has to be maintained in such a way that the surface roughness is very less. And if this feed, speed and depth are not maintained properly according to the workpiece or according to the size of the workpiece, then the surface will be more rough. And the last is the type of coolant use. Type of coolant use also determines how much the surface will be rough or smooth. For example, if a coolant has high heat absorbing capacity, then due to the friction between the tool and the workpiece, the amount of heat generated will be less. So the temperature will not rise drastically. So due to low temperature also, the roughness will be reduced, or we can say that the surface will be more finished. Thank you.